was pregnant with him was always sort of measuring ahead, but we really had no idea what Beckwith-Wiedemann was at the time. So he was always larger, and he had a larger tongue. He tended to rest with it outside of his mouth. So eventually at our pediatrician appointment, she had asked if anyone had brought it up to us before and suggested that we see genetics. So we didn't really know what we were in for. But when we did go, they had suggested to us that he might have Beckwith-Wiedemann and that we have him tested for it officially. And at that point, we did start doing all of the screening protocols with ultrasounds and blood work. And then from there, once we got our official diagnosis when he was about 5 months old, we really started going through all of the different specialties. He gets to see ENT and cardiology. He's had sleep studies. He did have some obstructive sleep apnea. He's not had any surgeries yet. He's doing pretty well, but we're really kind of watching as he grows. He has maybe the mildest of leg length discrepancies. It's just off by a few millimeters. Our pediatrician had sent us to genetics because of his tongue and his size, and they took a look at him. So we're from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We went to Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. The geneticist took a good look at him and suggested the blood work, and it did come back for gain of methylation at IC1, and it took probably about 2 months to come back, so it was a long time waiting too. It just would have been great to know that it existed, because even as we were throughout my pregnancy and all of his ultrasounds, he was always measuring larger, and you could even see he had his tongue just sticking out in all of my ultrasounds. And we always just thought oh, how cute, he's sticking his tongue out. And really, if maybe the people that we were meeting with for all of our appointments, if they had even really been more aware of it too, we might have found out a little bit sooner, which just, not that it would change anything, it would just have prepared us, and I don't know, would have just been a little bit of a different experience, I think.
It would have changed our birth plan, though.
Yeah, that's true.
We had to get an emergency C-section because he was too big.
Yeah.
That would have been nice to know, that there was potential for exponential growth at the end of the pregnancy. Maybe a few more ultrasounds the last week or something. My mother, I think, had been Googling it since he was born, because she kind of immediately knew more about it than I did when we told them. We kind of just called her on the way home. So I'm thoroughly convinced that she had already been researching it after he was born, with the larger tongue, larger size in general, and just naturally curious about things.
Yeah, we'd not even heard of it until our genetics appointment. So I had talked to my family, and they had also never heard of it. So I really had just gone over the basics of, this is generally what it causes, and these are the things we need to do for him. So in Pittsburgh, we do actually have a really nice children's hospital, somewhat close to where we live. We live about 40 minutes away. So we do have a lot of access to the different specialties. It has been interesting, though, just because even though we are in a really good area with a lot of good doctors, they maybe are aware that Beckwith-Wiedemann exists, but it is a little harder not having people who are very familiar all the time around. They know the general, but it seems like the specifics.
Yeah, there are specialties in their fields, but they don't necessarily know how they all tie together and the potential long-term outcome within this, that kind of thing.
In general, he's been doing really well, but because he's about 18 months now, we've been focusing more on speech as he's starting to make more noises and learn new words. So we've been speaking we have a speech therapist now who's wonderful, and then we have been speaking with our ENT as well. And even today we were discussing with Dr. Perlin, tongue reductions are very common. So his tongue is probably borderline. We're not really sure where to go with this yet. It hadn't really been on our radar because our ENT closer to home seems to, I would say, like he's more conservative. So
Definitely not comfortable with he doesn't have a lot of familiarity with the procedure.
So it's something where he said, our ENT at home had said, like, if we don't have to do it, we don't want to. Whereas it really could possibly be beneficial to him. So that is our current focus of what we're trying to figure out and what we need to do next.
What would I say to a new family? Probably just, they're not any different than a normal child. There's just a few more doctor's appointments, and don't worry about what you can't control, because there's a lot of fear and anxiety, especially at first, but you just have to
Around the screens.
Yeah, help them grow as best you can as a normal child, because in the end, that's what they are. A little mucky.